Time is not just a straight line. It bends, it circles, it repeats. What if the events we call coincidence are actually warnings written in the sky? In the year 1926, something strange happened. The world stood still. The sun itself seemed to die in the middle of the day. For a few minutes, entire towns fell into an unnatural night. Radios across America picked up ghostly static. Animals panicked. People whispered that the universe was sending them a message. Most history books never talk about it. Scientists buried it under explanations of astronomy. But the truth is, 1926 left behind clues that are resurfacing exactly 100 years later in 2026. Tonight we will revisit the forgotten eclipse and uncover why 2026 may not just be another year of stargazing, but a cycle returning, a warning repeating, a prophecy unfolding. January 14, 1926, a winter morning, people in America woke up to a normal day. Children walked to school, farmers tended their fields, factories buzzed with life. But by midday, everything changed. At precisely 11:15 a.m., the light began to fade, not like a normal cloudy afternoon, but as if an invisible hand had pulled a curtain across the sun. Reports describe the air turning cold, shadows stretched unnaturally long, birds fell silent. Chickens, confused, returned to their coops as if night had come early. Then, in complete silence, the sky went black. For nearly 3 minutes, the sun disappeared. A ring of fire glowed faintly around its edges, and stars shone in the middle of the day. People gasped, cried, and prayed. Many had never seen an eclipse in their lifetime, and they thought the world was ending. But the eclipse was not just a spectacle of light and shadow. Something else was happening, something science has never fully explained. Across the United States, radios suddenly crackled to life. Stations that should have been silent filled with ghostly static and faint, distorted voices. Some listeners swore they heard languages they could not identify. Others reported rhythmic pulses, almost like Morse code, echoing through the static. In Missouri, a farmer claimed his radio announced words that hadn't been broadcast anywhere. In New York, listeners described a strange metallic hum that lasted the entire duration of the eclipse. And then, just as the sun returned, the signals vanished. Newspapers dismissed it as interference. Scientists said it was coincidence. But to those who heard it, it was as if the universe had spoken. But perhaps the most chilling reports came from eyewitnesses themselves. In some towns, people claimed they saw more than just the eclipse. They saw a faint red glow on the edges of the blackened sun, a glow that some described as a blood moon shadow merging with the eclipse. One diary entry from Kansas reads, "The sun was black as coal, but a halo of red fire burned around it. I thought it was the end of the world." Scientists argued it was just the corona, the outer layer of the sun, but those who saw it swore it was something more, a warning written in red fire across the heavens. The world moved on. Scientists filed away reports. Newspapers buried the stories under simple headlines. People told themselves it was only the sun, only shadows, only coincidence. But whispers remained. Whispers that 1926 had not just been an eclipse, but a warning. Now 100 years later, the cycle is repeating. In 2026, the same skies will darken. The same shadows will fall. And this time, the signs will be even greater. The question is, did we forget the warning of 1926? And are we ready for what comes next? The newspapers told only half the story. Yes, the eclipse of 1926 shocked the world. But behind the headlines, stranger events unfolded. Events too unsettling for the front page. In small towns, farmers complained that their compasses spun wildly during the eclipse. Trains stopped on the tracks when their signaling systems failed. In Chicago, an entire telegraph line went dead for exactly 3 minutes. The same 3 minutes, the sun disappeared. One engineer wrote in his logbook, "It was as if the Earth itself lost direction." But these reports never made it to the public. Why? Perhaps because they hinted at something bigger than a natural shadow. Something that suggested the eclipse wasn't just blocking light, but disturbing the very field of our planet. Witnesses also spoke of sounds that could not be explained. In Oklahoma, a family picnicking during the eclipse described hearing a low hum, almost like a giant swarm of bees overhead. In Texas, people swore they heard a deep metallic ringing in the air, vibrating through their bones. And in California, one farmer claimed the sky whispered his name. Most dismissed these as fear, imagination, or tricks of the wind. But years later, scientists studying infrasound, low-frequency waves below human hearing, confirmed that eclipses can trigger vibrations in the atmosphere. The people of 1926 didn't know that. To them, it felt like the sky itself was alive and speaking. Hidden in private collections, diaries from 1926 describe details far stranger than any newspaper reported. A schoolteacher in Kansas wrote, "The children screamed when the sun vanished. But it was not just darkness. They said faces moved in the sky. I saw nothing, but their cries haunt me still." A doctor in Ohio scribbled, "For 3 minutes, every patient in the asylum fell silent, staring blankly at the ceiling. When the sun returned, they all began shouting the same word, cycle." And in a tiny town in Nebraska, a farmer's wife wrote simply, "The sun went black and I felt watched. Not by God, by something else." These diaries were never published. They were too disturbing. But today, almost a century later, they read like warnings written for us. But perhaps the strangest part of all was what governments chose not to say. In Washington, D.C., several telegraph operators reported unusual magnetic storms interfering with military lines during the eclipse. A classified memo was written about it, but never released to the public. In Britain, scientists at the Royal Observatory noted their instruments recorded unexplained spikes in geomagnetic activity. The records were quietly filed under anomalies. And in Germany, a physicist claimed to have detected unusual radiation levels. But his report mysteriously disappeared after he sent it to Berlin. It is almost as if the world powers of 1926 saw something and then agreed never to speak of it again. So what really happened in 1926? Was it just an eclipse? Or something greater? The official story says it was nothing more than a natural shadow. But diaries whisper of voices. Instruments recorded disturbances. Governments filed secret memos. The truth is simple and terrifying. We do not know. But here's what we do know. 100 years have passed. And in 2026, the skies will once again darken. The shadows will return. And perhaps the secrets of 1926 will finally reveal themselves. Exactly 100 years after the forgotten eclipse of 1926, the skies prepare to repeat themselves. But this time, the events are not subtle. They are not hidden. They are grand, fiery, and impossible to ignore. In the year 2026, the heavens will put on a performance unlike any in living memory. 4 great celestial events, 2 solar eclipses, 2 blood moons, all within months of each other. A cosmic sequence so rare, so precise, it almost feels scripted. Coincidence? Or the return of a cycle humanity was warned about a century ago? The cycle begins on February 17, 2026. On that day, an annular solar eclipse will blaze across the sky. Unlike a total eclipse, the moon will not completely cover the sun. Instead, a ring of fire will burn around its edges, a perfect halo of flame. For ancient cultures, this was no ordinary sight. The fiery ring symbolized an unfinished shadow, a doorway not fully closed. Legends called it a burning eye in the heavens, watching humanity. In 1926, people whispered of a red glow. In 2026, the red glow will be undeniable, a halo of fire circling the blackened sun, staring down upon Earth. Just weeks later, on March 3, 2026, the moon itself will bleed, a total lunar eclipse. The blood moon will rise. Earth's shadow will cover the moon, turning it deep crimson. To our ancestors, a blood moon was never just astronomy. It was omen, prophecy, warning. In 1926, people claimed they saw a faint red glow during the eclipse. In 2026, that glow becomes real. The black sun of February will be followed by a bleeding moon of March. Shadow and blood. 2 signs, 2 warnings, back to back. And then, the climax. On August 12, 2026, the United States will fall into darkness. The Great American Eclipse will sweep across the land. Day will turn into night across Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and beyond. Millions of people will stand together staring upward as the sun vanishes. In 1926, only fragments of the world saw the black sun. In 2026, America will become the stage, a total eclipse cutting across the heart of the nation. The same silence, the same shadows, the same chill. But now, in the age of technology, every phone, every camera, every telescope will capture it. And perhaps, so will the universe. The year ends with one final sign. On August 28, 2026, a second blood moon rises. 2 blood moons in a single year. The cycle begins with fire and ends with blood. The universe does not speak softly. It shouts, it repeats, it warns. 1926 gave us shadows and whispers. 2026 will give us fire, blood, and darkness. 4 events in 1 year. It is too precise, too perfect, too powerful to be coincidence. 4 events. 1 year, 1 century after the forgotten eclipse of 1926. A ring of fire, a blood moon, a black sun, another blood moon, shadows, fire, and blood. Coincidence or prophecy fulfilled? The cycle has returned. But the question remains, what comes after the cycle completes? They called it coincidence in 1926, but ancient cultures had another word for it, prophecy. Long before telescopes, civilizations tracked the heavens, the Mayans carved eclipse cycles into stone. The Mesopotamians recorded blood moons as omens of kings falling. Even Native American tribes spoke of the fiery eye and the bleeding moon as signs of change. 100 years ago, the cycle whispered. In 2026, the cycle screams. 4 signs in a single year, the exact same sequence ancient texts warned about. Across cultures, one prophecy repeats: when the fiery halo burns, when the moon bleeds twice, and when the black sun falls upon the land of the eagle, the cycle shall begin anew. Fiery halo. February's ring of fire, bleeding moon. March and August, black sun over the land of the eagle. The Great American Eclipse of August 12. This is not random. This is the prophecy unfolding, step by step, right before our eyes. In 1926, astronomers dismissed the strange glow, the eerie silence, the chills in the air. They said it was science, nothing more. But hidden in newspaper archives are letters from ordinary people, people who described something else. The sky turned red, not just the moon. Shadows moved where no shadows should be. I felt as if something was watching us through the eclipse. Warnings ignored for a century. Warnings we only rediscover now, when the cycle begins again. The cycle is not just a pattern of astronomy. It is a clock, a cosmic timer striking once every 100 years. 1926, shadows whispered. 2026, fire and blood scream. What happens in 2126? Will the cycle complete or begin something far greater? And so we return to the question, what happens when the cycle completes? 4 signs in 1 year. Fire, blood, darkness, ancient warnings forgotten for a century, now repeating with terrifying precision. Is it coincidence? Is it prophecy? Or is it something else? Something we were never meant to understand. 100 years ago, people turned away, choosing not to see. In 2026, the world will watch. But when the final blood moon rises, will we wish we hadn't?